Okay, we are going to talk today about the debate commission and presidential debates. I thought it was very funny when this issue came up over the weekend and we were told that out of 3 presidential debates this fall, 2 would be opposite very popular NFL games. I looked into it, and I must confess, as somebody who owns 1 share of Green Bay stock and somebody who's from Atlanta, the idea that the 2 games they picked were the Atlanta Falcons one night and the Green Bay Packers another night was almost too funny to believe. Now, the commission indicated that, of course, it tried very hard and it really worked at it. And a year and a half ago, it picked dates, and it's not its fault if the dates don't work. But here's the problem with that. The Monday Night Football game began in 1970. That's 46 years ago. Even by the standards of Washington, you would think somebody on the commission would have noticed that if they picked a Monday night in the fall, it would be opposite Monday Night Football. I know it's asking a lot of Washington to be aware of the rest of the country, but still, and I don't know if members of the commission don't watch Monday Night Football or don't care about the NFL or whatever, it's just kind of weird. Now, it's true that the Sunday Night Football games only date back to 1987, so that's only 29 years, and maybe you ought to give them a little bit of slack and think, well, 29 years to actually have an idea to reach Washington might not be all that long. So then I began thinking about the commission itself. The commission was founded in 1987. One of the founding members of the commission is still a co-chairman. It's responsible to nobody, self-appointed, raises money out of corporate sponsors, decides that it defines the debates, something which I don't think anybody's actually given it authority for, decides that it picks where the debates will be, and decides that it'll pick who the commentators are, who the people are who moderate the debates. Now, you have to ask yourself, by what right do a handful of insiders get to be in charge of all this? They were replacing the League of Women Voters who got upset because the campaign managers for George H.W. Bush and Governor Dukakis were muscling them about how to hold the debates, and so the League of Women Voters just threw their hands up in the air and said they quit. But I'd ask the question, shouldn't the debates actually be negotiated by the 2 campaigns, who after all represent people picked by millions and millions of voters? Shouldn't any debate commission be totally transparent? Shouldn't the process by which they pick moderators be totally transparent? Shouldn't the 2 campaigns have an ability to negotiate those kind of details? And why are we being told months out, this is after all the very beginning of August, we're being told that it's unchangeable, it's already been set in stone. Well, why is it set in stone? Who are the insiders who get to define for 315 million Americans? These are your presidential debates, take them or leave them. Why would they pick 2 Monday night and Sunday Night Football games as 2 of the 3 options? Surely, in September and October, there are days that have fewer competitors than those 2 days. So anyway, I think they should look at seriously moving the dates. We're told, oh, the logistics are too hard. I want you to think about that. We're going to talk about the decay of America. It's too hard to move a presidential debate with 6 or 8 weeks warning. That is a level of bureaucracy that is absurd. So I think there's a lot to talk about here. I think that it's perfectly fair to ask them to move the debates, and certainly they'll get a higher viewership if they're not opposite Sunday night and Monday night. And frankly, I don't want to have to pick between the Atlanta Falcons and my civic duty, and I sure don't want to pick between the Green Bay Packers and my civic duty. So I think there are some practical reasons here to rethink this. Don Reuter asked, who coordinates the dates for the debates and how will they be, or will they be changed? These debates are very important and should be viewed by all Americans without any conflict. Well, Don, this is entirely done by a debate commission, self-selected, who then apparently self-select people to follow themselves. So it's, and they're good people. I know many of the people on the commission are not bad people, but it's the whole notion at a time when the country is upset with Washington, upset with the establishment, when both Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump were campaigning on the need for real change. There's something goofy about being told that real change can't be done because of a group of insiders who are so bureaucratic that they can't rethink 2 dates 6 or 8 weeks in advance. Philip Hernecker says, does Trump have a right to change the debates or move them to another venue? Well, I think what you're going to do is get into a dance here. Trump will debate, I suspect, whenever the debates occur. Trump won every debate he was in the Republican primaries. I think he's quite confident that he will do well against Hillary. But he would like the largest possible audience. Ironically, remember that the Clinton campaign and the Democratic National Committee colluded to have the Democratic Party's debates with the smallest possible audience. I mean, they were doing late on Saturday nights, they were doing all sorts of stuff to minimize the audience for Bernie Sanders. So Trump has always liked big audiences. He thinks he does well in debates. Hillary, I suspect, would love to have no debates or one debate. The one debate ought to be at midnight on the Thursday or something. And, she'll say she's with the commission. After all, she is the establishment. Why shouldn't she be? And one of the 2 co-chairs of the commission was the press secretary for President Clinton. So she should be perfectly happy with this. But for the country, we ought to have an agreement to change the dates so that there's less conflict, greater audience. Trump is certainly willing to do that. We have plenty of time right now in August to do this. There's no excuse that says, this notion which we got back that the logistics are too hard. I want you to think about that. You can't move a debate from point A to point B. I mean, think about how rapidly we move World Series games. We don't know today who's going to play in the World Series. Somehow the networks manage to get there. The teams manage to get there. The audience manages to get there. You fill up the stadium every time there's a World Series game, and you do it on really short notice. But now these presidential debates, they're in the tradition of Washington bureaucracy. Slow, out of touch, unchangeable, and responsible and accountable to no one. Teddy Champa says, who do we call? What can voters do to get this change? Well, you can go online and find the debate commissions. And I want to, by the way, commend Olivia Burton, who's an intern with us this summer, who's done great research. She's tracked down all this stuff, and she's tracked down the debate commission. And we'll post on GingrichProductions.com. For anybody who wants to go there, we will post how to reach the debate commission and let them know what you feel. I did Greta Van Susteren last night on the record, and we talked about this, and she put it up as a question, and 86% of the people who voted in Greta's poll voted to change the dates. 86%. So there's probably a pretty good popular majority that says, let's use common sense, let's be practical, let's maximize the audience. Samantha Jakes, there are contracts with sponsors for commercials, and then those contracts are promised viewership. Someone needs to look into this further, as those sponsors can redact their contracts. That's way beyond me. I'm not even sure, do they have commercials for a presidential debate? That's really weird. It used to be back in the old days when Nixon and Kennedy were the very first debaters. I don't think they had commercials, but I don't know. Don't take that to the bank. We're gonna have to go check on that. That'll be part of our debate research project here at Gingrich Productions. So I'm gonna have to ask Olivia if she can track that down. Laura Bance says, do you really think Donald can do well in a debate against Hillary? Well, look, Trump won, I believe, every debate he was in against 16 candidates in the Republican primaries. He won it in ways that made the elites very uncomfortable. But for normal, everyday Americans, he was apparently a very, very effective debater. In addition, he has the huge advantage that while he's sometimes clumsy, all he has to do is tell the truth. Hillary has the great disadvantage that while she's often clever, she's lying. Lying so much that to everyone's shock, the Washington Post gave her 4 Pinocchios. That means absolute total lie for what she said on Chris Wallace's show on Fox News Sunday because she just plain lied about the entire email controversy and lied so totally that even the Washington Post had to call on it. So Hillary's problem will be how does she get through a debate where her lies are exposed and where she's forced to defend them against somebody who's very aggressive. I mean, Trump is not going to pull any punches. He's going to go right after her. And I think she'll probably go right after him. But I think those will be three, very highly watched debates. They may be, in terms of sheer entertainment and sort of reality television, the best debates in the history of presidential debates. So we shall see. Rebecca Curran, how do we get Trump to rise above the negative comments made about him and focus solely on his vision and plans for America? That is a really, really important question. He has a great case to make if he sticks to big things. The difference between where he would grow jobs and where Hillary would kill jobs, the difference between where he would keep us safe and she would risk bringing in refugees from Syria even though they might belong to ISIS, the difference between conservative judges who would protect the Constitution and radical judges who'd undermine it. The big differences are so big. If Trump could just discipline himself to stay at that level, ignore all the provocations, ignore all the petty attacks, he would be dramatically better off and he would be much, much further ahead in this race than he is right now. Kay, I think it's Raccio, do you think that the commission is even open to changing the debate dates? Well, the commission doesn't own the idea of debates. I mean, if they're totally unwilling to change the dates, even if the country wants it, and this is where the American people matter. If millions of Americans say, we want you to change the dates, it's going to be pretty hard for Hillary not to want to change the dates, and it's going to be pretty hard for the commission not to want to change the dates. And frankly, if there are millions of people who want to change the dates and the commission says no, invent a new commission. I mean, nobody made this the only debate commission, and nobody said this is the only way to have a debate. So I think we need to, don't assume that this commission is permanent or that it's sacred or that it's like a group of high priests gathered around the altar of the debate god. This is a group of folks who got together. They invented a gig back in 1987. They've had a great run, and now they're, I think, a little stiff and take themselves a little too seriously. Kelly Lawrence, if the system is so rigged, then how do we know our vote really counts? Well, I do think you have to worry at times about vote theft. You have to worry about the degree to which people who are not American citizens vote. You have to worry about a variety of things. But on balance, over 225 years, we've managed to elect people. We've managed to have very contentious elections, such as 2000, where Al Gore actually got more popular vote, but George W. Bush carried the Electoral College. So I think it does require a significant legal effort on both sides. Historically, you've got to have a lot of lawyers, and they've got to be directly involved, and they've got to monitor every single precinct, or it could get stolen. And I think it's important for us to be on the side of enforcing the law and of monitoring the vote. Stephen Credian says, do you think the moderators will be biased against him like Candy Crowley was against Romney? Well, that's one of the things they've got to consider. I mean, I would assume that the Trump campaign has the right to veto a moderator who's unacceptable. And I don't see any reason to accept a liberal moderator. I don't accept any reason to accept a moderator who's already openly for Hillary. So that's I think, a conversation they've got to have in trying to decide how they're going to do this. One last question from Chris Thomas. What do you think the chances are that Hillary will skip debating altogether? 0. She can't hide from these debates. It's true she's been hiding from the press. She hasn't had a press conference in months. But she's going to have to debate. I think, as Trump has said, 3 debates is a reasonable number at this stage where it's one-on-one. 1 debate for the vice presidential candidates. And I think that she will show up. I think that Trump will show up. I mean, if the commission rejects the American people and decides to hold the debates on Sunday and Monday night, I still suspect both candidates will show up. But it would be wrong. There's no excuse for being stubborn. This commission should serve the public interest, not its own ego. And I hope by talking about this today on Facebook Live, hope you'll tell your friends and your neighbors that they should insist that we have the debates on nights when there'll be maximum turnout. And I really appreciate your spending time with us and having a chance to talk about this very interesting issue.